Well, hi guys, welcome back to Linda's Pantry, and oh, I'm super excited to bring you another canning video. And this one is also out of the new Ball book of canning and preserving, and it's got simple one-jar meals, and this really is right up my alley. I've been doing this for a long time, and I love seeing that everything I was doing was correct, and you know, it takes some common sense, but these meals sound delicious. They've got chili verde, a chicken chili verde, chicken curry, a chicken and gravy dinner in a jar. They've got a pot roast in a jar, beef stroganoff, which I do all the time, and a shredded chipotle beef for tacos. Well, I don't have beef, but I do have an elk roast that I can cut up. The instructions, though, are kind of vague. It says 2 pounds of beef brisket trimmed and cut into 2-inch cubes, 2 cups of sliced onions. And then the seasonings is you're going to need 2 teaspoons of salt, and you want to use a non-iodized salt, just a good habit for canning. 2 teaspoons of dried oregano. I might bump that up a little bit. I like oregano. 8 cloves of garlic, and I like that idea. 2 or a half a cup of chopped fresh cilantro, which is in the refrigerator, and then 2 adobo chipotle peppers in adobo sauce chopped up, and then beef broth. So I've got my beef broth, and it's a beef base, organic beef base on the stove, low sodium. And I may omit the salt in this just because that has sodium already. I don't know that we need all that salt. And then your processing time, 1 hour and 30 minutes for quarts, or 75 minutes for 1 hour and 15 minutes for pints. So, but it doesn't tell you what to do with the meat and the onions. And I'm not going to raw pack them into the jar. So I want to par cook them. So I'm going to go ahead and saute them just lightly, and then pack them in the jar, put the broth on there, and because the raw meat will produce a lot of liquid in the jar, and I don't want, you know, the broth that's in there going out. So the instructions are a little bit vague on this, but it's okay. They do have step 1, prepare the canner, step 2, you know, filling the jar, filling 1 jar at a time, pack ingredients, remaining liquid, seasoning, tightening the jar, leaving it into headspace. But I'm a firm believer in not raw packing meat. I really like it par cooked, even if it's a little bit. So on the parchment paper I have here, I'm going to chop up the adobo. I've got my onion here. I'm going to slice that, and you need 2 cups of onions sliced. I'm hoping that I get, you know, 4 or 5 pints of this, and then we'll just open up a jar and we'll have tacos. You shred that meat and you make tacos. And I do this kind of stuff only usually I've got the plain meat in the jar and I add the seasoning at the stove while I'm heating it up. So when you open this, they say to serve, drain contents of the jar, shred meat and reserve your broth, okay? Saute sliced onion in until soft, and so it has you slice another fresh onion until soft, and then a half a cup of, add beef and a half a cup of broth, simmer 10 minutes, and serve in tacos. So there you go. So that's what we're doing today. So I'm gonna get chopping everything. I've got my oregano here. I am gonna add a little bit of cumin. I really like cumin, so we're gonna add that because I always put that in my chipotle tacos. So I got the chipotle peppers. All of my canning stuff is clean and ready to go over here. My broth is back on the stove. All I have to do is prep this, and the jars are in the dishwasher, so we'll be ready to go. So I'll be back when this is all prepped. Okay, so what I've done is I've got my cast iron skillet, and I'm sauteing this. I started the onions first, and then I added the garlic. It just made more sense to pack the jars with everything evenly distributed. And I've got the meat in there and just slumping everything down, putting a par cook on the meat. And now I'm adding in my cilantro last. And the adobo peppers, or the chipotle peppers and adobo sauce are in here. Because after you chop them up, how do you evenly divide and know that there's going to be the same amount of spice in each jar? It makes more sense to do it this way. And if you guys have this book, look at these instructions and see if I'm just looking at it wrong. Let me know in the comment section. It's a little confusing to me. So this is about ready. My jars are not quite done. So all I'm going to do now, because all the meat has got a nice color on it, it's no longer looks rare or rare on the outside. It doesn't need to be cooked anymore, and I'll bring the broth back up to a boil before I pour it over the hot jars, but it can sit here in this hot pan and hold the heat in. It smells amazing. I'm just going to tell you right now. So all the seasonings, the chipotle peppers, the cilantro, the onions, and the onions, I want them to be all soft, and of course in the cooking process they're going to get extremely soft. But as you know, when you pressure cook or you cook things, they shrink up. I don't want everything in the jar to shrink up, my liquid to boil out, so it just made sense for me to do it this way. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't think so, though. I know that this is totally safe to do it this way, so that's how we're doing it. So we're going to wait on our jars to get finished up there. They've got a few more minutes, and we'll get to loading jars. So we're back, and I'm ready to load up these jars. And I sauteed the meat and the onions just till the onions slumped and got soft, and I added probably another quarter cup, maybe a third cup of onions, because I think they're delicious. And because I've got everything right in that same pan, it's all evenly seasoned. I don't know how else you could do this, but these onions are going to be like caramelized onions when they come out of that jar at the end of the canning session. And I'm hoping we get 5 pints. The roast was 2.14 pounds. I had a couple nibbles, and let me tell you, it's delicious. Spicy and flavorful. It's going to be fantastic. Okay, so I thought I'd better bring you in for a close-up shot, just because this, it's really, visually, it's better to see it up close. So here's the meat and the caramelized, or not really caramelized, but the slumped onions, I should say, the spicy onions. Oh my goodness. If I get 5 pints to put on my shelf, I'm going to be super excited, because this is quick and easy tacos. My husband can take this camping. Any weeknight meal with something like this is perfect. And you've got the garlic, the onions, the cilantro, the spicy chipotle peppers. Okay, watch now. Your liquid, you pack that jar pretty darn tight. You don't need much liquid. And I may have to make another batch of this. I'm telling you, I'll keep this stock. If I decide to make another batch of this before the weekend's out, I'll just keep this stock, because I made quite a bit. I made more than I needed, even though I already knew that. So I've debubbled, and I'm not happy with my headspace. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead. It's okay, but there's meat sticking out. I'm going to go ahead and take one chunk out. I really want this. I don't want the meat at the top. What if I don't eat it for a year? I don't want the meat at the top to look all gray and dried out. It's so unappealing. I'm super picky about that, and I think everybody should be. And I have already inspected the rim of my jar. It's no cracks, no chips. Make sure you check your jars. I check them like every time I touch them. Oh, wait. I'm my jar grabber. Okay, fingertip tight. Yep. And you want it snug, but you don't want it so tight that you're gonna buckle your jar, because that lid has to be able to come up and down as pressure allows. So there you go, guys. Isn't it beautiful? I am so excited. Okay, in the canner. These are gonna can for 75 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes. And that means I'm gonna let the canner come up and it'll start venting. We vent for 10 minutes. Then we put the weight on, and once it comes up to 15 pounds pressure for my altitude, then we'll start the timing. All right, and I'll bring you back when I'm taking them out of the canner. I'm gonna go ahead and leave these jars in here for a couple of minutes, just to acclimate to the temperature in the room. And looking in the canner, I still have looks like about 2 inches of water left with all the jars in there. So once they all come out, there's probably only an inch of water. This evaporates to me It seems like more, but the space in the other canner is bigger. So, you know, it's all, I don't know. Okay, so we are ready to bring our jars out, and I've got an oven mitt because I have a couple Tatler, 3 Tatler lids in there, and I want to make sure I tighten those down as soon as I bring them out of the canner. And so get your jar lifter. This is not a Tatler. Remember, don't tip your jars because you're going to end up possibly, these jars haven't seated down. You can actually cause food or broth to get up under that lid and create, maybe a piece of cilantro gets up under there and prevents your jar from sealing. So no tipping. And I'm famous for tipping, so no more tipping. So we're bringing out the Tatler lids and everything looks really good. No seals are hissing or doing anything funny. Go ahead and tighten those down. That last little bit, because remember on a Tatler you kind of loosen it back off after you finger tight. Unless you're using the Easy Seal, you want to do that. So I ended up with 4 pints. That recipe was exactly 4 pints and not one little piece of meat left over. And so because I had room in the canner, and that's who I am, I decided to put another pint jar of black beans with the leftover beef stock or broth, and there's a 12-ounce jelly jar with some black beans in there and broth, and can that up. It's the same amount of time. So I filled the canner, and there you go. And that's my last Tatler. And now I probably have 1.5 inches of water. So there you go. Look how beautiful. These are gorgeous. And we're gonna have Chipotle tacos. Chipotle tacos anytime we want. So guys, I hope it inspires you. If you're on the fence about canning, that you go ahead and do your research, get a reputable canning book. Don't take anybody's word out there, not even mine. Use this as a guideline and inspiration, and go ahead and get yourself a written research guide, either online or buy yourself a canning book, and somebody, you know, from a company or something you trust. The National Center for Home Food Preservation is probably your best bet as far as resources online, and you'll be safe, and you're going to feed your family well and keep your costs down. It's very inexpensive. So, all right guys, I can't wait to see you next time. I hope you subscribe, and I hope you come back.